The Mission Impossible series generally does not have strong thematic storytelling. In fact, the stories within these Tom Cruise-led spy actioners generally have minimal narrative and thematic depth and are usually just excuses to see incredibly shot car chases, awesome action sequences, and Tom Cruise doing death-defying, testicle-shrinking stunts, even ones where he accidentally breaks his ankle. If anything, the thin stories within the Mission Impossible series are just secondary to its thrilling action, and that's not necessarily a knock against the series. As a whole, the Mission Impossible franchise is a shit ton of fun and a literal blast. These movies are generally well-paced, have inventive action, and there is a certain thrill to seeing its lead actor do his own stunts. And honestly, those elements rightfully take priority over a deep narrative. It's a series that knows what it excels at and has just enough story and character development in order to allow the audience to care about the stakes of these various adventures. So if anything, the action itself doesn't feel pointless. Yet still, even with that said, these films narratively and thematically don't really go beyond that. They're not especially deep. Hell, even 2018's Mission Impossible Fallout, i.e. my favorite Mission Impossible movie, because the sheer amount of action and stunt work from Tom Cruise remains unparalleled, actually doesn't have that interesting of a thematic story. If anything, its thesis can be summed up as, hey, you know how government entities and spy agencies are often cold and unforgiving asshats who would sell everyone out if they believe it would be for the quote-unquote greater good? Well, like, what if they didn't? And that's basically Mission Impossible Fallout's overall narrative and thematic message. And don't get me wrong, Mission Impossible Fallout was an awesome and exciting cinematic experience, but still, it's not necessarily interesting in the thematics department. Its overall thesis has minimal depth. And with the exception of the first Mission Impossible movie, which was different in terms of tone and style, Mission Impossible Fallout's overall simplistic thematic meaning is similar to the storylines and the thematics of most of the other Mission Impossible movies as well. For this reason, I was originally skeptical of the somewhat recently released Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. After all, seeing as this new Christopher McHugh Mission Impossible adventure was the first part of a two-parter, the narrative is being split up into two movies. And given that the Mission Impossible series is normally a lightweight when it comes to its story and themes, I was concerned. Like, it's one thing when movies like Dune or Across the Spider-Verse split its movies into two-part movie experiences, because those films and series overall inherently have strong thematic storytelling with an abundance of depth, which, as stated before, is an attribute that generally cannot be said about the thematically simplistic Mission Impossible series, meaning that Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 had to be more than just a fun actioner. If anything, it's needed to give the Mission Impossible series a storytelling stat buff, lest I give Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning a dead-ass reckoning. And thankfully, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 does this, even beyond the thrilling action, how the movie still follows a satisfying three-act structure despite needing to leave narrative room for the inevitable Dead Reckoning Part 2, and Tom Cruise's willingness to do awesome stunts. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, or Mid-RIP 1 if you will, actually has a very relevant story, a narrative about a very particular 2023 buzzword and hot button topic. That buzzword and topic being artificial intelligence. Yes, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1's plot revolves around an AI, a rogue AI that is referred to as the Entity, that can easily gain access to government databases, technology, communications, and such around the globe and has its sights on supplanting the human governments of the world, all while those said governments seek to capture the Entity and use it to their own ends, all at the expense of everyone else. Because, you know, that's what governments kinda do. But with that said, there is one group of operatives who desire to destroy the Entity rather than harness its technology and capabilities for the benefit of their government. And those operatives are, of course, Tom Cruise's franchisal main character Ethan Hunt and his various cohorts, people that's the Entity views as a threat to its very existence. And from there, Ethan Hunt and the rest of the Impossible Mission Force, always a fun name to say, face off against a dangerous rogue AI, as well as various governments who want to use the Entity for their own ends. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1's AI storyline is a relevant narrative angle. After all, companies have been rolling out AI software that can create images, videos, and essays with basic prompts, which makes the new Mission Impossible's emphasis on AI very resonant with our current reality. See, AI in reality could become a disrupting force. Sure, unlike the new Mission Impossible, the AI currently on the market are not sentient beings, but rather programs that have the capability to learn. Things like machine learning, speech and voice recognition, and etc. But the most relevant real-world AI that is impacting our world in 2023 are the types that can analyze information on the internet, whether that means images, videos, online communications, written articles, or even works of art in order to create something new. Similar to the entity, real-life AI has the potential to destabilize the status quo. If anything, it's a technological Pandora's box that now open can wreak havoc on the world, or at least on certain trades. Though in the movie, that means the entity overthrowing the world's governments, whereas in reality, this means upending entire industries. Industries like filmmaking, because obviously, we were going there. See, Hollywood is currently at a crossroads. In fact, actors, writers, and other types of artists within the film business are concerned about the usage of AI. Because of course, there is this well-founded fear that both now and in the future, when AI's capabilities improve, that movie studio executives, for the sake of saving money, might partially or entirely utilize AI in order to do work that would normally be done by a human being, using AI to write scripts, to do artwork, which is sadly already happening, and replace the likeness of actors, something that could honestly destroy people's careers and livelihoods. Sure, maybe not the big name writers, actors, and artists, but those on the bottom, like extras, new writers, actors, and artists trying to get a footing in the industry, and actors that do minor supporting roles. All people that, when it comes to AI, would truly feel that shit, which is objectively bad. And that's even before discussing how the art form would be impacted. After all, the business is all about the human element. We connect with films due to their heart and emotional resonance, i.e. the aforementioned human element. The type of thing about a movie that is actually real and shouldn't be mimicked by a machine or an algorithm through technological fakery, something that would make all films lesser. And that even applies to straightforward actioners like the Mission Impossible movies, because with Mission Impossible, watching Tom Cruise do absolutely jaw-dropping stunts like driving a motorcycle off a cliff and then parachuting down that said cliff is part of the allure. The fact that it is actually a stunt that is performed rather than computerized fakery is the appeal. And with AI, there's this threat that movies won't be made like this anymore, that they'd lose the human element that gives cinema its soul, overall transforming the industry for the worse. And the entity within Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 embodies that fear. After all, AI in the real world is a threat to the film industry because it can analyze online data and past works of art and create its own work that would have otherwise have been done by a human hand. And while sure the technology isn't 100% there yet and can't create a whole damn movie out of scratch and whatnot, the technology, as always, has the capacity to improve and is currently starting to be used on a smaller scale. Thus, AI is already starting to challenge art's human element. AI has the capacity to change the world, and not necessarily for the better. And the entity is like that, but on a bigger and sentient scale. It can access mankind's data and communication systems with ease, make predictions about people based on behavioral patterns, mimic voices and personalities of other people in order to obfuscate the fact that it's actually a machine doing and saying these things, and it has goals of upending humanity's high place in the societal food chain, which admittedly, that is a little different from AI programs in real life, because none of them are sentient and want to take over the world yet. But there are some startling similarities, because like the entity, but on a smaller scale, real-life AI can also sift through a treasure trove of online information, it can analyze and produce results much faster than the human can, and mimic the images, videos, and voices of real people. And while sure, real-life AI isn't destabilizing governments like in the movie, real-life AI does, however, have the potential to destabilize various industries, especially artistic trades like filmmaking, and this should be opposed at all costs, even if Hollywood executives view AI as the future and think they stand to gain from it, which by the way is very similar to how the world's governments featured in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning try and use the entity to benefit themselves rather than viewing it as a Pandora's box that will do way more harm than good no matter whose hands it's in. And thus, real-life AI, in this instance, is harmful and deserves to be viewed with disdain. And for that, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1's narrative about AI hits a bullseye. Unlike other Mission Impossible films, this movie has some meanings and layers worth exploring. And sure, the relevance of the film's themes may have been on accident because, you know, movies take years to make, and Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning was made during the COVID lockdown, meaning that the AI themes weren't as pertinent as they are now in 2023. That doesn't change the fact that the movie is now releasing at a time when new AI is being introduced to the world at large, meaning that the film's themes are applicable to current events in some capacity. Because honestly, in terms of thematic purpose, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 released at the right time.